Courtside Conversations.
Courtside Conversations.
The Roland-Garros Tennis Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Courtside Conversations, the official Roland-Garros podcast. It's your front row seat to the stories, stars and soul of the most iconic clay court tournament. I'm Gigi Salmon, and together with special guests, we're going to be keeping you company throughout the year with the second Grand Slam of the year, never too far from our thoughts. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that with me today, former player, veteran broadcaster and current president of the International Tennis Hall of Fame, Patrick McEnroe. Patrick, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you. I'm still reveling in what I saw just, I guess it's about a little over a week ago at Roland-Garros in the women's and the men's championship. So it was an amazing couple of weeks and two incredible finals.
I was going to ask how your Grand Slam decompression is going, because we always need just a few days afterwards just to let everything sink in.
You know, that's true. I flew straight home on Monday, although I did make an appearance Monday morning to Court Philippe Chatrier. I was lucky enough to be staying in the neighborhood, and I took a walk, and I said, I got to do something I've never done before, which is I got into the grounds. They let me in. They had to fix my credential because I wasn't supposed to get in. And I did a little video on the court out of respect to the two players, especially what I saw in the men's final. So it was kind of cool to be there the morning after, seeing everybody there to tear everything down from a logistical perspective. And then I flew out to California to see my brother's oldest son get married. John's oldest son got married in Northern California. I'm now on my way back from Southern California doing some business for the Tennis Hall of Fame. So I don't know if you call that decompression, Gigi, but I'm so pumped up for Wimbledon now after seeing what I saw on those iconic clay courts at Stade Roland-Garros.
Well, when you were standing on Philippe Chatrier, you made a video, you put it on social media, you described the men's final as the greatest match ever played on this court. So my question to you is, where would you like to begin with the final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner?
Well, I think we can begin there. I've seen many great matches. There's obviously Nadal, Djokovic comes to mind when they had that epic third set tiebreak. There's countless others. You go down the line. But as far as matches that I've seen myself, starting with, I'll start with my brother's match against Borg at Wimbledon 1980, which Borg won in the epic five-setter, then going through the years of some of the epic many of the finals at Stade Roland-Garros weren't exactly what I would call epic because Nadal was so darn dominant right over the years. He barely lost sets, never mind going to 5 sets. I think John Isner was the only guy to take him to 5 sets over the years that he won his 14 majors there. So to me, this was the greatest matchup, the greatest match, at least that I've seen at Roland-Garros or that I've watched on television, because these two amazing players, Alcaraz coming off the mat, match points down, then Sinner doing the same early in the 5th set to almost win it again in the 5th at 5-6, 15-30. So it had a lot of momentum shifts. It had incredible comeback from Alcaraz. Sinner, having lost those 3 match points in the 4th set, still able to come back from a breakdown in the 5th. And, the most important thing to me, though, is just watching these two players elevate the sport of tennis, the way the game is played. And I think, to me, that's what I took away the most from the match, is just how aggressive they are, even on defense, on a clay court of all things, where normally great defense is supposed to beat great offense on the red clay of Roland-Garros. But now you're seeing the evolution of the game, I think, happen right before our eyes, and these two players epitomize that.
Yeah, they certainly do. And you mentioned your brother's final against Borg from Wimbledon 1980. Carlos Alcaraz was asked in press afterwards what it feels like with people comparing that final at Roland-Garros to that final at Wimbledon, also Federer and Nadal from Wimbledon in 2008. And have a listen to what he had to say in response.
If people put our match in that table, it's a huge honor for me. I don't know if it is at the same level as those matches, because those matches are the history of tennis and the history of a sport. So I let the people to talk about it. If for them are almost the same. But for me, I mean, watch it from outside or realizing what are that matches, in the history of tennis. I don't know if our match is in the same table as them, but just happy to put our match and our names in the history of the Grand Slams, in the history of Roland-Garros, and just I led the discussion to the people.
And we will keep those discussions going. I mean, Patrick, they've said it themselves that they truly bring out the best in each other when they face each other.
Yeah, it is remarkable. I actually was there courtside the first time they played in a major was at the U.S. Open in 2022, and I think it was the quarterfinals, and Sinner had a match point in that match as well, and that's when Alcaraz went on to win his first major. But I remember sitting; it was COVID was still sort of happening, so I was not in the booth. They put me courtside for the match, and I was just watching I call it the tempo, Gigi, of each point was just at another level, like the speed, and not only the speed of their shots, but the speed of their movement, and then on the run, able to still be pretty aggressive when they're shot making, which they couldn't keep it up, point in, point out, but they were pretty darn close. And I remember thinking to myself, Nadal and Djokovic and Federer took the game to another level with their all-court play and their ability to defend the court better than anyone ever has. But these guys were defending the court and attacking from normally what we would think are defensive positions. And you throw in all this skill that Alcaraz has with his ability to come to the net, to play the drop shot, and Sinner's working on those parts of his game to try to stay with Alcaraz. And it was interesting to me also during the tournament when Alcaraz, through the first few rounds, dropped a set here or there, and sometimes he kind of goes in and out with his concentration. And I think it was after he won his fourth round match, he said, "Well, I've been watching Yannick, and he's winning his matches so easily, so efficiently that I'm trying to learn from him." And I think that's kind of what both these players are doing to each other, and hopefully to the rest of the field, because I think it would be great for the game if some of these other young players can step up their games, whether it's Arthur Fias, who unfortunately got injured at Roland-Garros, Jack Draper, who's had an amazing year, some of the other youngest, Fonseca coming up, Menchik coming up from the Czech Republic. So hopefully some of those younger players can get into the mix. It's certainly going to be amazing to see these two, I think, go at it. But at the moment, they've distanced themselves from the pack. And I think it would be great for tennis, and I think it will happen, that a couple of these other youngsters will step up and be able to join them and compete for majors. Because these two have now won the last 6 major titles between the two of them.
And another great point you made on social media was this was 5 hours, 29 minutes, no bathroom breaks, no trainers, no times out, a little bit of muttering to the box, but no yelling at the box. It was just Sinner against Alcaraz.
Yeah, it was nice to see that, and I've got a lot of comments on my social media that I was referring to this player or that. I wasn't referring to any other players. I've seen it happen from all players, but they take the bathroom breaks, and sometimes you need to, and so that wasn't meant to take a shot at other players. It was meant to again show my respect to these two players. And then someone said, "Oh, Alcaraz got some dust in his eye and got seen by the trainer in the first set." I'm like, come on, relax, everybody. This was not about denigrating anybody else. This is about elevating what we saw from these two players. And I think it showed that, you don't need to have some of the things that have become routine in pro tennis. I think these two showed that you don't necessarily need to have those, whether it's bathroom breaks, which, let's be honest, many players do it to change the momentum of a match. Players, have the physio come out many times for valid reasons, but sometimes also to have a little gamesmanship. And I like the coaching. I think the coaching on during the matches overall has been good for tennis. But sometimes it is a little much. The players constantly bickering at their box. I like the coaching part. Alcaraz gets a lot of coaching.
Yeah.
Sinner gets a little bit. But, the yelling at the box from the players, to me, is a little much. So I thought that the way these two guys handled themselves, and this is the most pressure you can possibly play under, right, in the finals of a major. And they both knew that they had to bring their absolute A game, and that's what they both did.
We have to remember with Yannick Sinner, it was just his second tournament back after the 3-month suspension, got to the final in Rome, lost to Alcaraz. And I was listening to one of his coaches, Darren Cahill, speaking on the Serve podcast with Andy Roddick. He said, look, as a coach, all you can ask for your players, they give you everything. And that is exactly what Yannick Sinner did. He gave us absolutely he left everything out there in that final.
Yeah, I think particularly in the fifth set, when I thought, as the fifth set started, clearly Alcaraz had all the momentum. He got the early break. He had a chance to get a second break. But Sinner just was, like he always is, very methodical, took his time, didn't panic, went to his towel. You could see he was starting to feel some cramps as well. His legs were getting heavy, understandably. And Alcaraz, remember, had some of those same issues a couple of years ago, including at Roland-Garros in his match with Djokovic when he cramped up. So I think both guys really showed a lot of will, in addition to the tremendous skill that they both had on display during the match. But they both were able to handle the pressure moments. And when I was watching Alcaraz, I was getting ready to come into the studio after the match because he was down triple match point in the fourth set. And I remember when he won that first point, I just remember thinking to myself, this really may not be over. I mean, just because, it could have been over, and Sinner had a good look at that second serve at 15-40 that I think he was kind of do I go big or do I play it safe? He kind of got caught in the middle. But you were nitpicking here. But once Alcaraz held that game, you felt like, okay, he's going to have a decent chance to break serve, which is exactly what he did in the next game.
You talked about them setting the bar and pulling themselves away from everybody else at the moment. It feels a bad thing to say, but the other day, I think I said it out loud, which I shouldn't have done, but I'm always going to be disappointed if there's a final that features other players because it was so great and they never disappoint. The contrast in personalities, in styles, the head-to-head they're building. This is a matchup that will never disappoint.
No, I think you're right about that, but I think it's okay to say that we wish for someone else to join the party or not. I mean, we're all tennis fans. I think that there are some other players that have the ability to step up, and I think that's what we all would like to see. As great as these two guys are, the wonderful thing about the big three was that it was three, right? There were very different, contrasting styles between all of them, and then you had Andy Murray get into the mix and Stan Wawrinka get into the mix. Del Potro, won his U.S. Open. So I envision that it's going to be these two guys, knock on wood, for the next 10 years, assuming they're healthy, racking up major titles. But I think that you'll see a couple of these other youngsters rise up, and maybe a couple of the veterans. There's a couple American guys now in the top 10, like Ben Shelton, who just broke into the top 10. Tommy Paul and Taylor Fritz have been fixtures and doing well in some majors. Whether they have the all-around game to go all the way, I would say, is very much up for debate at the moment. But there's a nice mix of those sort of what I call more veteran players, and then, as I mentioned earlier, some of those younger ones that are starting to break through.
If I could, I don't want to call him a veteran, but I guess he is still going strong. Member of the big three, Novak Djokovic, great run through to the semi-finals. Do you think he will get Grand Slam title number 25?
I do not think he will, and I said that at actually the beginning of 2024, that I didn't think he would, which was a surprise to many people, particularly after he had won 3 the year before that. Father Time is undefeated. Djokovic did win the Olympic Games, which was an incredible effort. I think, the stars aligned for him to be able to do that 2 out of 3 sets. It worked out well for him. I'm not sure he can beat Alcaraz in a best of 5, and I'm not sure he can beat Sinner in a best of 5, but it's not unfathomable. He is the greatest of all time, in my view. He's won 24. As you said, he played very well in Paris, having, by his standards, not played well all year. Won Geneva coming in. That helped them just get a little bit of confidence going, and beat Alexander Zverev pretty comfortably, who's the number 3 seed, number 3 player in the world, to make to the semifinals. And I thought he played really well against Sinner, but he still didn't win a set. He was close to winning a set, at 2 different times, but I think that's the reality, and I think that's why we saw him, when he walked off the court, sort of take a pause, drop his bags, kiss the court, wave to the crowd. He got a huge, well-deserved ovation. Now, I do think that Wimbledon coming up is his best chance because that's where he's dominated, obviously Australia as well. But I think, there's not as many players that are as comfortable on grass as there are on a clay court or a hard court. So I think it's a little more unlikely he can get picked off early in the tournament. That being said, Alcaraz has won the last two Wimbledon. Sinner has been knocking on the door of getting to a final. But I think for Djokovic, that's his best chance. And I don't think it's going to happen, but I certainly wouldn't be shocked if it did.
You were calling his Roland-Garros semi-final alongside your brother. How much fun is it to be, or maybe not, to be in a commentary box alongside your brother?
Oh, it's a lot of fun. For me, it's a dream come true because I've been doing this, as you said, for many years with ESPN, and then was TNT for the first time. I got to work with them and their team, and doing it with my brother is great. I started out as an analyst. Actually, started out as a courtside guy, then as an analyst, and then I morphed into doing more play-by-play and more hosting over the years, with really the hope and intention that one day I'd be able to do it with my brother, on some big matches. So I've been lucky enough to do that. I'm lucky enough just to continue to be in the world of professional tennis and broadcasting. So absolutely love it. Never take it for granted, and always trying to improve in how I do it. So when you work with my brother, you got to be on your toes. So I like to say I keep him on his toes a little bit too.
You also host a radio show, and I'm wondering, who or what do you get the most calls about? Is there a certain player, a certain something that people always want to talk to you about?
Well, I'm just happy, Gigi, that I have a radio show that's specifically about tennis, because as you may know, in the United States, tennis isn't exactly the biggest sport to talk about on talk radio. So I'm happy to just do a 1 hour show once a week on tennis. I usually throw in a couple other sports, but a lot of buzz about what just happened in this tournament. I think clearly the casual fan of tennis in the U.S. Was like, hey, this Federer guy and Nadal, and what's going to happen when these guys leave? I'm not going to be interested in tennis anymore. So I heard from more of those types of fans than I'd ever heard from before, that watched this final, and that really were blown away by the type of athleticism and the game that they saw between Sinner and Alcaraz. So I think that leads me to believe that tennis is in a very, very good place in the U.S. The U.S. Open and Wimbledon are always huge events for the fans, but we're trying to break through the barrier and get into sort of more the top sports that are talked about on the radio. And for me to be able to have a chance to do that is a lot of fun.
You just mentioned Nadal. Now, this feels a lifetime ago because it happened on the first Sunday of the tournament. What did you think of the ceremony held in honor of the 14-time champion?
I thought it was beautifully done. The French have a way of knowing how to do those types of honorees, events. We saw it in the Olympic Games, which was one of the greatest Olympic Games we've ever seen last summer. And so I think it was the perfect touch of, his greatness, making it personal by having the other big three there as well. And then to come up with the print, on the side of the court that will always be there was pretty cool. And so I think for Rafa to get that kind of love was well deserved. He didn't always get it there, right, at Roland, because a lot of the fans are very well educated tennis fans, and I think at some point they're like, can we get someone else to win this thing? Or like, this guy's dominating. So I think it's often when the great champions are sort of towards the end of their domination, when maybe they're not as dominant anymore, that they tend to get even more love from the crowd. And I think you see that a little bit with Djokovic now as well, when he's not the top guy. But I thought it was beautifully done, and it was really emotional obviously for Rafa and for all his fans.
Yeah, you could see how emotional Rafa Nadal was. So let's hear from the 14-time champion, get his thoughts about the ceremony that was held in his honor.
Well, of course, no. I have been very, very emotional. I think it was perfect, honestly. No, I couldn't expect a more emotional day. So I can't thank enough to the president, to Gilles, to Amélie, and to all the people who made that day possible. Honestly, no, have been unforgettable. Plenty of emotions for a guy like me that I don't love these kind of things because I'm still a little bit shy for all this stuff. and I don't like a lot to be the center of attention for these things. I was enough when I was playing tennis, but I enjoy it, honestly. No, I suffered a little bit with the emotions, but I enjoy it a lot. Yeah, it was amazing. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone for making that day happen.
Yeah, it was a lovely, lovely day. And he is actually quite shy, although people think, how can someone like that be so shy? Now, someone who is not shy is mature, Patrick, way beyond her years, and she's been so for years, is Coco Gauff, who is now a two-time slam champion at the age of just 21.
Yeah, she's remarkable in that she's, like to say about her, she's very resilient. She's had lots of issues when you talk about her serve and her forehand. And, she's a center of attention in our country, in the U.S., having won the U.S. Open a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of expectations on her shoulders. And not only does she handle herself with a lot of class and grace on the court, but off the court as well, because she gets asked a lot of questions about social issues and so on and so forth. I think she handles them beautifully. And to see her win that second major and to do it the way she did it, which was really a testament to her grit, to her determination. The conditions obviously for that day for the women's championship were very difficult with the wind and the cold air. So both players were struggling with that. And not to mention it's a clay court, so you're always going to see more unforced errors on a clay court. So I think a little bit too much was made of the high unforced error count because of the nature of the conditions, the surface, so on and so forth, and the two players. And Sabalenka has become a great big match player in these last few years. So for Coco to lose an extended first set when she was well down, she came back, and then she loses it in the tiebreak. A lot of players would have just folded, and lost a 6-2, 6-3 set in the second set. And she just continued to battle and did that throughout the next two sets. And I think that's really what won her the match, just her figuring out ways to stay in points, going to the slice forehand a lot, using the conditions to her advantage. So I was very happy for her. I think, she's been ultra consistent, but she hasn't been great at winning those big matches, the big title, including in Rome just a couple of weeks ago and against Paolini, Sabalenka before that in Madrid. So she's been sort of knocking on the door in the big tournaments, and it was nice to see her break it down and win that second one. I think she can win on every surface. I mean, she's won on hard court. I think there's no reason she can't win on grass as well with her athleticism and her ability to play offense and also defend the court. So I think women's tennis is in a great spot. And Sabalenka clearly deserves to be number one based on her record, her consistency. But I think you definitely look at the field going into a major in the women's game thinking, okay, there's a lot more than just two players that could win the title.
Yeah, it's so nice to have the strength and depth, the contrast of the styles, the contrast of the characters. And I think for me, what stands out about Coco Gauff is her mental strength and how she has the frailties that you touched on. The serve can break down, the forehand. And one of her coaches, Matt Daly, speaking after the final, I was asking about those frailties and how things have changed. And he said the brave thing is with Gauff is that she listens and she makes the changes during a tournament. And Patrick, these players, that they're playing out everything in the public eye, and she's tweaking her serve. There's a little marker for her grip, so she knows where to put her hand. She just gets on and does it.
Yeah, I think she's not afraid of facing the challenge, right? Because a lot of players would be like, I don't want to deal with this, and I just got to do with what I have. And, that can be a mindset, especially when you're playing in a big tournament, of most players. But she has a willingness to kind of face her issues and confront them and deal with them and take feedback. And I also think that she's very strong. She's a strong-willed person, and so she has a good mix of listening to the advice she gets, but also be like, you know what? I'm the one out here. I'm Coco Gauff. I'm going to do what I think is right, whether it's try to serve big or try to get my first serve in at certain times to negate the possibilities of the double faults, which have become an issue. And I think she's navigated all that really well. And I think the final at Roland-Garros was a prime example of her ability to sort of micromanage not only herself during the course of a big match, but also what she's up against from an opposition standpoint, from the conditions, and just with all the pressure of playing in a major final.
As we know, her dad doesn't watch in the box because he gets too uptight and he can't handle the emotions. And afterwards, I asked where she got her mental strength from, and he said it's her faith, her spirituality. But he also said it was from him. He said, "I'm a very confident guy, and I believe I can do everything." And then he followed up with, "Because if you don't believe in yourself, who will?" And I sort of thought about that afterwards, and it might come across as arrogant, but at the same time, it makes sense. You have to have that belief in yourself.
Yeah, and I think there's no doubt that she does. And if he thinks that he's part of that, God bless him. Good for him. And she's got a great team around her parents, and her siblings as well. So it seems like she's got a great family supporting her. And I think they're finding the right balance, right, of bringing in professionals like you said, Matt Daly and others, Brad Gilbert, a couple years ago, different people to help navigate her journey, and again, it's a testament to Coco to be able to have all these different voices, some that are family, some that are hired hands, to help her through this process. So I think it's obviously working quite well, but I will give 99.9% of the credit to one Coco Gauff.
Absolutely. Let's hear from the French Open champion, the Roland-Garros champion. She was asked about and was describing the difference between her emotions after winning her first Grand Slam title, US Open 2023 and Roland-Garros 2025.
Yeah, obviously, I think the first one was maybe more emotional, but I think this one was just harder because, you win one and you just don't want to get satisfied with just that one. So it was very difficult to match up. And I also felt like, this one was one I really wanted because I do think this was one of the tournaments that when I was younger, that I felt that I had the best shot of winning. So I just felt like if I went through my career and didn't get at least one of these, I would feel regrets and stuff. So today playing Irina, I was just like, I just got to go for it and try my best to get through the match. And yeah, that's what I did.
So Aryna Sabalenka had points for 5-1 in the first set. Most of the talk, Patrick, has revolved around the comments that Aryna Sabalenka made a few on court, a few in press, because she came straight into press, which is not always necessarily a good thing because the emotions are high. She since said, "I've spoken to Coco Gauff. I've told her, look, she absolutely deserves it." But I cannot imagine what that must be like. It's so tough. You've gone through that defeat, and suddenly people are standing there asking you questions about it.
Tennis is the only sport in the world where the athletes are asked to do that. Can you imagine in a soccer match or a football match, as you would call it, the losing team staying out there? I guess when they do the World Cup final, maybe did they even stand out there and get their prizes, if they lose in the final? I don't know. It certainly doesn't happen in American sports, in basketball or American football, where the losing team has to immediately, deal with not only the press, but a presentation. That being said, I think Aryna realized that she probably didn't say it as gracefully as she should have. She's very emotional. I think that's partly why people like her. She's got a great personality. She shows her emotions. And I think she did the right thing. I think her and Coco seem to have a very good, healthy relationship, very competitive, which we hope will continue. So I don't make too much of it. A lot of people who called into my radio show were giving her a hard time. And then you had the contrast of Yannick Sinner, right, the following day, and how well he handled himself. But I don't read too much into that. As you said, it's very emotional. It's a tricky spot, and I think she realized, it didn't come across, I think, the way she meant it, which was like, it was a brutal conditions. It was tough. We were both making a lot of unforced errors, but she certainly, in retrospect, could have said, "You know what, Coco handled the conditions better than I did," and good for her.
And I'm sure during your coverage, there was an awful lot of time spent on the fairy tale story of Roland-Garros 2025 in Lois Boisson.
Yeah, that was remarkable. I mean, it was amazing for the crowd. She got an amazing game to watch too. Extremely athletic. Can play the two-handed backhand, can play the slice. Reminded me a little bit of who we all miss, is Ash Barty. The big forehand, the top spin, and obviously Ash was even better around the net, taking the ball on. But she had a really beautiful game to watch, and it was an amazing run for her, having lost the opportunity a year ago because of the terrible injury she had, but to get the opportunity and to make the most of it. So I hope we'll see a lot more from her. What I loved about her the most, Gigi, was that she loved the crowd, because we've seen a lot of players at their home slams over the years kind of shrink shrink from the pressure and the excitement when they get on a little bit of a run. And she seemed to grow with it. And that was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it certainly was. And finally, on the women's draw, Iga Świątek, I know she's not now heading on to her favourite service in grass. And by most people's standards, she's had a fantastic year, not by her high standards. Any worries for you about Świątek, or do you think she's going to be just fine?
I'd say I'd land somewhere in the middle because I've always been a huge fan of hers. I think that she should become a little more defensive minded at times to be, better when she's not playing her A game. So I actually think that her run at Roland-Garros was a positive for her because she had really been struggling throughout the year. I mean, didn't win a title, I don't think she even got to the final of a clay court event, which is shocking to how she's dominated. So I think in a way, maybe it'll alleviate a little pressure from her, continue to work on her game, develop her game. And I think she'll end up being just fine. Will she be a dominant number one? I'm not sure about that because you've got Sabalenka who's risen, you've got Coco and others. But I think she'll get back, and this is not the last major she's ever won. I think she'll be back winning big titles.
Now, I don't know how you fit this all in, but outside of your media commitment, something that also takes your time and keeps you busy is your role as president of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. Now, you've held that since 2023. For someone listening who doesn't know too much about what it does and what you would do, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Well, the International Tennis Hall of Fame is the ultimate honor in tennis for a tennis player to be inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame. We have a museum in Newport, Rhode Island, where the place that you go to see the history of the entire sport. And there's a reason it's called the International Tennis Hall of Fame because, as we know, tennis is one of the most international sports. So I'm very proud to be part of it. Try to bring more attention to what the Hall of Fame does. We've got new programs that we've unveiled in the last year, like Be Legendary and the Road to Newport, which Maria Sharapova, the Bryan brothers are on this year. They'll be inducted later this summer. We were able to do something with BNP Paribas in their suites at Roland-Garros, which shows some of the great old rackets and things from some Hall of Fame players like Emily Mauresmo, the tournament director there. So we're really excited about what we have in front of us. And again, for me, it's an honor to be part of the Hall of Fame and try to spread that message of not only the great Hall of Famers and their stories, but also the history and the culture of tennis and how that has been an important part of the growth of the sport worldwide.
Yeah, it's so important to preserve our tennis history, to inspire generations. And I know something else that's important is to spread that word outside of America. You don't want people just to think it's an American thing, but as you said, the word international is very key in the title.
Yeah, and that's a big part of what myself and Dan Faber, who's our CEO, and the rest of the team is trying to do is spread the word. That's why we were in Paris. That's why we did an event in Germany last year. That's why we'll be at Wimbledon doing something there. So we're trying to expand our horizons and let you Europeans know that the Tennis Hall of Fame is a lot about you too, not just Americans.
And people, you're based in Newport, but people can come over, take a visit, and they can see. I was watching a piece you did recently with Tracy Austin and just talking about the history, and you can go there and you can go through the museum and just soak up the history of our sport.
Exactly. And now you can do it digitally as well. We've got some great digital partners. So you can even go online, just go to tennisfame.com and you can search and you can see a lot of these things online, which is tremendous as well. So I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's been awesome. And I'm looking forward to my next foray over to England for the championships, as they call them.
And Patrick, we look forward to seeing you in London. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And that's it from Courtside Conversations. Thank you so much for listening, for your company. When we return, just like that, the grass will be over and the hard courts will be in focus. So until next time, bye for now.